Fantastic. You see it live on your end?
I guess I do. Where would it
All right.
be?
Top left
Yeah,
corner. All
right
right.
there.
Welcome, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, please type in the comments, whether you are on LinkedIn or YouTube. And I have with me Pam Cail from RPC Logistics. So over the past week, everybody's been talking about their reaction to the tariffs. The tariffs definitely were, let's just say, haphazard, going back and forth to different scales. And as recently as Monday, the Trump administration was saying how they were going to go down, and 145 won't really be the rate that they stay at. So last week, I thought to myself, there are three. Let me actually transfer over to my slides here. I actually met Pam in person here. That's at the Seller Summit 2024. I'll be at 2025 in a couple of weeks. For any of the resources of this webinar, I highly suggest you go down to the web address on the bottom left corner, charlestheseller.com/webinar. You'll find everything I'm talking about there. I don't even have an agency, so I have nothing to sell you on. I don't ask you for your email address. Nothing. This is purely value driven. Last week, let me go back before I jump ahead that much. 3 strategies were really advocated for, and Pam, you can chime in on either one of these. Number one, we could import into an FTZ or a foreign trade zone, which for legal purposes means it's a geographic location within the United States. But once the goods get into this FTZ, no duties are paid on it because it's not in the U.S. mainstream economy yet. Once they leave the FTZ, under normal circumstances, at that point, you would pay duties on it. So, for example, I import a container into an FTZ, no duties are paid on it. I take those goods in the container out a month later, I only pay the duties that are due to the government as if it's the date 1 month later. I hope I was clear on that, on how FTZs usually work. And Pam, you can chime in here.
All
Why
right,
do I say
I'm going to jump
usually?
in.
Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in. FTZs were first started really for quota merchandise. And that being said, quota merchandise is like sugar and cotton and so forth. So, they come, a few times a year, whatever, and then there's too much. So then they had to put them somewhere. So that's how you can defer taxes and you can streamline it a little bit at a time. Now, you are actually right, Charles. You can bring in an FTZ into your product into FTZ, except if it's coming from China. Right now, President Trump has forbade that, and you cannot use the foreign trade zone for products of China. It's in one of the executive orders, and I can
As of
certainly.
February 1st.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that being said, you can bring it in from Vietnam, from Canada, whatever. Which, if I can just scoot over just a little bit into some things that are similar to the FTZ, a couple people have thought wisely, I should say, and that is they've kind of created an FTZ in Canada for China products. And I think this is amazing and certainly out of the box. So I went online and investigated and so forth. And from what I can see, I do not see anything that is illegal. You're kind of stretching the legality a little bit, but this particular warehouse, you import your container just like normal into Canada. They accept it into their Canadian warehouse, and then they drip it to the U.S. in the de minimis, which is $800 or less, fulfillments. That actually those shipments will cross border. You'll have a PAPS, which is a pre-registration for anything coming from Canada or Mexico into the United States. No problem. You'll have, just like if it was here, you would have your commercial invoice that said, okay, I have, 50 of the 5,000 units coming over, and they're $700. Therefore, your Chinese tariff would not apply because it's a de minimis. It's approved from this warehouse and put through this warehouse as though it came from Canada. Like I said, this is stretching it. There's a lot of moving parts in it, but I do, after talking to them, I do feel like this is something that can be done. Now,
So what would be
remember,
needed is a warehouse, a bonded warehouse in Canada, and
yes,
then dripping shipments under 800 to the US. Go on.
right. Now, each one of those shipments is going to have to be cleared and go through the process like that. So I kind of stepped out and thought, okay, all right, so I'm dripping all this over, and my customer is not like the Amazon seller. It's not going to be, less than whatever 10 units or whatever. My customer is going to be a big boy, and he wants 2,000 of the 5,000. So really, so I don't, get on his nerves and make him upset and all that, I would actually need a warehouse that was on the United States side after it crossed border that was able to accept it. Well, I thought of my buddy Charles. He's right up there in New York. And you can go, bring in Toronto, cross the border, and then Charles can store it for you until you get your 2,000 units. We bring in a FTL, and we deliver it to your end customer. Now,
Well,
that
yeah,
is
go ahead.
for a larger person, not just your little Amazon, I want 10 units.
Yeah, no. And I don't even know if my warehouse is equipped for that right now to just take on all that volume.
But it doesn't have
But
to be
go ahead.
FTC. It just has to be because you've already
Right,
paid your
right.
dues.
It's
It
already
just has
cleared.
to be a warehouse. But
Yeah,
even if it's not Charles's, you see the big picture. You can utilize this,
sure.
and there will be fees. There will be extra fees. Let
Yeah.
me just be perfectly clear. This is not a straight shot by any means, but if you're in, like one of my customers, I mean, he's looking at $88,000 in tariffs. Well,
Yeah.
I can tell you it'll be less than 88,000. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
I don't care if you
through
bring
that.
one at a time.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, look outside the box. Go ahead and talk to, Charles, you got a good head on your shoulders. I mean, talk to it
Thank
and
you.
make sure it's feasible. See if you can get somebody that can store it. Maybe you get the first, few months free, or
Mhm.
you get a discount. It's something that is actually done. And I'll give a kudos to Ship Hero here, and it's Ship Hero. I got it from Steve Chu, and I went out to their website, and it was one of their LVK warehouses that have a very good plan set. So we can just work together and make it happen. So it's
Well,
not, you're not dead in the water. That's
definitely
what,
not.
there is hope.
There's
That's what
definitely
I
hope.
want to tell everybody.
So so what my homework was over the past week learning about FTZs is I really went into the trenches because the FTZs were being floated around the e-commerce community. And I said to myself, I really have to educate myself on what this is, because I'm no person who's afraid of paperwork. Bureaucracy doesn't make me scared at all, especially with AI. And
And you're a good one for
I love this stuff.
FTZ.
Thank you. Yeah, and to my surprise, so Kevin King, who, by the way, if nobody is signed up for Kevin King's newsletter and selling on Amazon, you definitely should. Again, you can hit that link on the bottom right corner. All he does is deliver value. It's free and it's worthy. Definitely bottom right corner. Hit up that newsletter. He sent out how FTCs can help Amazon sellers specifically. The top portion of this slide we went through, and what he said in the newsletter didn't actually take into account what Pam just told us, that as of February 1st, there's an executive order that basically eliminates FTZ usage as a benefit for us in the United States. So For non-Chinese goods, it actually works beautifully because of the tariffs going haphazardly in from 10 to 20 to 30 to 250. It at least gives you the option to defer and see where the dust is going to settle. Then you go through with it. Then a little bit about the benefits. There's one way to use it in the deferred duties, meaning even as it still exists in the legal structure, it can improve your cash flow in that you don't have to pay the duties up front until you need it right away. So you may have to pay 145% duty, but it's just not due until you have to extract it from the FTZ into the U.S. economy. That's just one benefit that still stands true. Another thing that was a part of that executive order that we didn't cover is that there's no duty elimination, meaning if you want to export the goods to another country, you cannot get out of the obligation to pay that duty on the initial entry into the United States. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you destroy the product, maybe you infringed on some sort of copyright, it's not even fit for sale in the United States, you still owe the duty that was imported to the FTZ. All of that is particular to the Chinese product as of the February 1st order. The key requirements to become an FTZ. Number one, you have to be a US based business. You have to have an FTZ grantee. So I believe it was as far back as 1936 or 7 when these FTZs came about. Every city, I believe within a 60-mile distance of a port recognized within the FTZ Operator Act, is in a somewhat pre-approved region. So if you're in a big city like myself, I'm in Brooklyn, New York, we could be based off of the port in the city in Manhattan. So what the benefit to being in one of those 60 locations are that are close to a port, we can apply to become an FTZ through a process that's called ASF. ASF makes the application process 30 to 90 days instead of the 10 to 12 months it may take any other place to be an FTZ. Of course, I still have to comply with all the framework that Customs and Border Patrol need, meaning inventory checks, spot checks by Customs and Border Patrol, audits, and I have to have ample security and definitely do some background checks on employees and things of that nature. But if you ask me, it's nothing that a typical business, especially that runs a warehouse, doesn't already do. But I didn't want to pull the trigger on it just yet. Again, it's still a lot of work. It's a significant investment, somewhere between $6,000 and $15,000, depending on a bunch of different things. But compared to the amount that you could save if utilized correctly, it's a good arrow to have in your quiver, and especially if you're in an ASF compatible zone, it's a no-brainer to at least be educated on. Something that those of you in big cities and within FTZs may already have access to is New York City. It makes it very, very easy for me to apply as an ASF. They reduce the fee for me, and it's sort of like a business development or business empowerment type of thing that they facilitated, and it's really not hard at all. For any of you located in New York, it's called the NYC EDC. They make it really, really simple for you. So whether you're going via ASF or FTZ, actually, all you do is you contact the grantee, submit an application, which the application, even if you're applying in a non-approved zone, is very, very simple. It goes to a board for a review. ASF is a little less of a review. And then if you get approved as a full FTZ zone that's not through ASF, that'll take about 10 to 12 months, like I earlier mentioned. And if you get approved through the ASF method, 30 to 90 days, you get all the board does is basically adds you as a pin on the map, and no further zone is really needed to be approved. So it's truly something to be educated on. That's all I have to say about that. These are your requirements. Now, this is something where, Pam, you can chime in on.
Okay.
You do need a bond to be a FTZ. I don't know if you could share that bond with something you already use to import through regular Customs and Border Patrol. Anyways, the bond shouldn't frighten anybody. Pam, would you happen to know if you can double use that
Right.
bond?
It's actually a bond for the other products, for the other people in your, in case you have other
Assuming you're
people
taking
in
those
your,
in, yeah, yeah.
yes,
It's
yes. So
actually another
it's a
requirement
little,
that I checked. You don't
right.
have to be open to the public to be at FTZ.
Right, exactly. It could be your bond, but it's not going to be your
Hmm.
import bond. And in order to have FTZ runs solely separate than if you had a warehouse that wasn't FTZ. In fact, you can have the same warehouse and have
Right.
one part chained off with a chain link fence and have FTZ in that, and then the other where anyone can walk around and not be walled off. So the bond has to be FTZ and warehouse, and you can't mix the two. So you would have to get a special FTZ bond. They are a little more expensive because basically you have got freight in there that is not accepted into the United States yet.
Right. Right.
So it's called bonded freight. And so it came in, and you are actually a bonded facility, an extension of U.S. Customs.
Now, right, that's what I was going to ask you. So, if you go into a bonded facility, the goods hit the port, let's say from China, um, the container would just go straight off to a bonded facility, or is
Yes.
there some sort of review that happens at the port before it's released?
No, no. It's already the there's paperwork. If you have to pre-qualify or what should I say, pre-address, just like anything else.
Hmm.
If you're going to bypass customs, of course, another form, it's government, you would fill out a form saying that you are going to bypass, this is going to go to the free trade zone. And then that paperwork, that's when I was telling you, that paperwork would be submitted with the total amount that is due. And, the 5,000 units at X number at 145% comes to this much value. And that would be basically your receipt and also your bill at the same time if you pulled it out all at once. So
Gotcha.
from that point, you would start deducting what you took out and what was needed.
Okay. And I mean, for somebody who has a facility within 60 miles of a port, I mean, I would think that you don't even have to move. It's just filling out forms and maybe even investing a little that you would have been paying in duties anyway.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah. And then so here we are. We're at step number 4. We're facing a new reality. We had a previous strategy. This would have been, good to know before the executive order came out. Um,
I think that's how he
yeah.
planned all of them.
Right. And then you have this new category people should be familiar with on the second square there, privileged foreign status. So what the executive order did was create this category, privileged foreign status. I think it was for Canadian goods too initially, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
At, at,
And
at the
that's
beginning,
when
he
the duty is
blanketed
locked.
everything.
Hmm. I got it. So then, yeah, that rendered everything ineffective. And then the duty drawback is what I was referring to as far as the exporting thing. That's just ineffective at this point. Um, okay, so that FTC loophole is closed, and this is really what I wanted to end off with. And definitely, Pam, we're going to chime in on this. The DDP method. I think the official kosher interpretation of it is there's a factory, there's an intermediary company that the factory sells to at whatever price that transaction may take place at. After tariffs, the landed price that the intermediary company would sell it to me at is actually the same price that it was pre-tariff. Now, how legal is that? It seems like that is a current loophole, but I wouldn't put it past the Trump administration to close that.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either. But
Now,
at the
did I get
current,
this the moving parts right, Pam?
right, you do.
Okay.
You actually do. Now that's one of those that makes me very nervous. I'm telling you, I have a flashback of the state taxes again, because what they're the DDP is seller to seller. Okay,
Mhm.
are at what point do you become the seller? Okay, they in the webinar I was on, they used Amazon, and it was like, okay, so China, this intermediary, is dealing with the ultimate consignee, which is Amazon. Well, that being said, okay, so where are you?
Right.
I mean, I don't even know if your name's on the document anymore. Are you really the importer of record? And
Well, with
and
DDP, you're not, right? DDP, it's
right,
the
right.
seller
So
is not the import of record.
I can't find it. I can't find it that it flips back over to the seller. But
Mhm.
then it's like, okay, DDP is strictly seller to seller. Okay, you just explained that. Okay, seller, and you think you're the seller. Well,
Mhm.
you are the seller after someone buys it, and someone actually buys it on Amazon. That's when you sell it.
Well, that's if you don't own the
So
product. I mean, it. So
it gets
if what I'm doing is I'm doing that same method that I described to you, supply factory, intermediary, me, not to Amazon, to me.
to you
I
directly.
should be in the to me directly, and then I ship it into FBA. I can show that I took possession of the item. I have a bill of lading showing that it came to my facility.
And so Amazon is another intermediary, and you,
But Amazon doesn't own the product. I own the product.
right, right. So, but you're not selling it until after Amazon gets it.
Right. Right.
So, this is, to me, this is where the gray area is, and not is, could bite you all but back.
Hmm.
So, it's just like when Amazon had the state taxes, and the government found fault with
Yeah.
the state taxes, and they said, hey, you got to pay state taxes, here's 3 years of your earnings, of your sales. Okay, now all of a sudden you've got this DDP, you've got this unknown person, you can't even prove you're the importer of record, but you are the recipient that put it to another warehouse, and then now it's sitting in Amazon waiting, in a fulfillment center waiting for you to sell. Once again, seller to seller, DDP,
Right.
seller to seller. That seller, once it gets there, you got a cash sale in Amazon. So who paid the 145%?
Well, the idea is that I paid the intermediary company 145%, but it was just at a very discounted on a very discounted invoice.
Right. So was that was that widget you brought in fair market value? Was it
No.
was it reasonable?
No and no.
If you brought in your widget, and if you take 145% off of it, I mean, now it comes to be 20 cents. Is that a reasonable amount for that product to enter the United States?
No. Does it need
US
to be?
Customs is the only one that will say that. Just like in a commercial invoice, you cannot have a zero value on an item. Like if
So
some
there is a
supplier wants to
requirement
give
for it
you
to be
something,
reasonable.
it has to be reasonable. And at these high
Ah.
tariffs, what is reasonable? I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, you got to have your widget at 2 cents to make it reasonable. By the
Right.
time you get
Right.
through with all these tariffs on it. So that is where my concern is. I'm scared for you all that all of a sudden, and it took years, but I mean, and I'm all about the DDP. I mean, look,
Mhm.
No one's going to put on my grave that you paid $140,000 in tariff under on a file for me.
Right.
So that doesn't make me a winner. But the point here is that Amazon is not going to say, "Oh, I'll take it," because I that's a seller to seller. No, they're going to come back and give the federal government all your sales, and then you're going to have to prove the credible value of that item to U.S. Customs. And if it came in under that um, respectable value, then U.S. Customs can go back and charge you for the correct amount. And
So
and
that,
they can do
yeah.
it as long as it hasn't liquidated, and it takes 7 years to liquidate on most
And
items.
so the reason why I bring it up, first of all, let me give some attribution, is Kevin King actually sent this out in his newsletter again. This is Brandon Young's strategy, the founder of Data Dive.
Uh-huh.
He called it the first sale doctrine method, but after reading it a little more, I'm pretty sure this is the DDP method that we were just going over. Does the first sale doctrine have anything to do with this? Because as far as I'm concerned, the first sale doctrine means I could go into ShopRite, buy something, and then sell it online because it was a legitimate purchase.
Well, it does make sense. I mean, I don't have anything to debate that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But it
as
just
long
won't
as
sit
it
well
was
with
a
them.
reasonable amount, a reasonable figure. That's where
Mhm.
they're coming from. It can't be zero. It can't be 20 cents and and that's how a lot of people get caught when they actually import, like before all this Trump tariffs and all this. I mean, back in the good old days, someone would say, "Okay, I'm bringing something in," and in fact, we actually had this. These were little wooden decoys. And I'm in the South, and we're in the middle of all that. So he brought in, and he didn't think he brought them in for like 87 cents each. Well, that was
Yeah.
under fair market value, and he got dinged. And he not only got dinged and said, "Oh no, sir, you have brought these in several times, just not this many, and it would never have been discounted this much. But you are also going to be on my sanction list, and everyone on the sanction list will get examined, viewed, stalled, delayed, and make your life miserable until they don't want to do it anymore. There is no set end game." So when we start fudging with the numbers, we need to be careful because everything's electronic now. Back in the day, electronics didn't really track and trace and all that. But, now they know a decoy is not 87 cents that's 2 feet by 2 feet and, floats in the water. It's not. It's more in line with the $2.30. And he had to pay a penalty plus the balance. And so that's when you end up in trouble, and you don't want to be on the sanction list. Now I'm not
Of
naive enough
course.
to sit
Right.
here and say no one does this, whatever.
Yeah.
Look, I am not the judge or the jury in this.
I
I
got you.
I don't have a political game in this, but I'm
Yep.
just saying they do have they do have abilities now that can track and trace unbelievable. And really, I know everyone's all excited about AI and all that, but that actually is our worst nightmare for what's the fair market value and how's it done, because they can pull all that information with a conversation and
Yeah.
have seven
You're
different
telling this to
ways.
a bunch of Amazon sellers that in the beginning of the month just went through a whole reimbursement strategy
Yeah,
rerun when
yeah.
Amazon recalculates the value of your goods. But
So,
okay.
so
Yeah.
you just, I mean, what you go with caution. I mean, you're all entrepreneurs. You're probably all type A personalities as well. So we kind of live on the edge to begin with, and I do feel like um, a lot of this is going to just calm down. You got to really remember we have only been in this high tariff for less than a month.
Yeah.
Less than a month. Now it's never going to go back to free.
No,
I
no, no.
mean,
It's not going to be free. And
no,
I mean,
but it's not
we
going to
could
be two hundred
see the
percent.
end. I mean, we could see the end of this back and forth. We could see the end of that, especially given
Right.
the news this week. But I have two questions for you. Then we'll transition to Q&A. I have some in the bank over here.
Okay.
First question is, and you already started on it. Is Customs and Border Patrol ready to police this? This is going to stop everything if they want to, enforce this equally.
That it's already happened. It's already slowed down. It's already a mess. I can tell you, I mean, we are getting customs clearance approvals at the end of the day, the end of the time, the 12th hour, right before the last free day. I mean, and this is documents that we have submitted a month ago that we're just waiting. Now you have to wait 5 days before the first arrival to actually process and clear customs. That's the soonest you can do that.
Mhm.
However, I mean, unless it's a pre-clear type thing, but we're like on the finish line, having it, and the broker team. I mean, they're working 24/7 just to keep up with all the back and forth, and I'm sure the rejections. And they're saying that the actual tariff system, the ACE system that they use to transmit, that it is, it has been taken down just to regroup, like on a Wednesday. Usually you get a month's notice or something when customs is going to shut down or whatever. Oh no, it was just shut down last Wednesday. 5:30. Well,
Gotcha.
5:30. I mean, I'm still going strong at 5:30 p.m. And I was like looking around, and it was down. It was down. So it had for them to keep getting these updates, and
Mhm.
a lot of brokers. I can tell you how much of a mess it is. Uh, they call them the T86, which is the de minimis. And some brokers have just stopped altogether doing those entries. There's just too many. They don't have enough people. There's too many.
Right.
Customs is rejecting half of them for one reason or another. And it just is, it's just a mess, really. I
And
mean,
that's where I was going with it. That's where I was going with it.
mhm.
So the adoption of the new de minimis rules are going to be so de minimis is eliminated, I believe you said only from China, or is it just
Only from
not from
China
Canada?
right now. At May 2nd, only from China. Only from China. The other ones are all right. And that's why the Canadian pseudo FTZ that we were going to drip them in,
Right. Hmm.
that's why that's going to work. It'll work for so long. Now, someone asked me how long. Well, under this administration, it might last until, May 3rd. I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
But right now, and let me say, everything that I'm talking about is right now and
Right
pretty
now.
much my opinion on what I have read and what I have been, privy to. So, we could get off this webinar, and I could be wrong because there are new orders that came out, and
Yeah.
we've got
So
executive orders that just
in your
retaliated everything.
in your scenario where we drip everything to an FTZ in Canada and then bring it into the US through the de minimis, where is the duty paid?
The in I took a toy, for example, and
Yeah.
actually walked this through. The the There is no duty on a toy in Canada, so that was
Okay.
free, but you had to
All
pay
right.
GST. When
Okay.
you drip it in to the USA, you're just going to pay a harbor maintenance fee and merchandise processing fee because the duty is free from Canada unless if it is $800
Under
or
de
less.
minimis. Hmm.
So $800 or less, duty free from anywhere other than China at this point in time, right this minute. And
Very clear.
yes, and that is why this strategy actually worked. Um, from this Canada. So you bring it in as a whole, and you strip it out, and bring in parts. Now I'm sure they've got a connection where that they deal with UPS and so forth for the end
Sure. Uh-huh.
user. If it is a small, if it's an individual or a small company or whatever. But that being said, we've got all types of customers. I mean, sometimes it can, just be two cartons. Well, people don't want to open the door two cartons at a time if they've got a,
Yeah.
trade show to go to or whatever, and they need, 2,000 items or widgets.
Okay.
So but there is no duty. Now, I'm glad we're going back through this because I want to make it perfectly clear. The only reason there is no duty is because the entry into the United States, the PAPS entry, PAPS entry, is $800 or less. Now, if we did this same thing and we brought the 2,000 units that were over the value of 800 from Canada, even trucked it across
Mm-hmm.
border and brought it
Mm-hmm.
to your New York warehouse, and it ended up being over 800, you would pay the 145% plus the
Wow.
original tariff. Now that's what
Because
a
the
lot of
source of the
people.
shipment was technically China.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. And you did
Okay.
not change its name, change its value, change its identity,
Mm-hmm.
anything about that. And I have got a very interesting call this morning, actually, and I told him, I said, "Well, amazing you're talking about this because he has got things coming in that are steel from China, and he wants to know how to get them here. High dollar machinery. Well, there are certain things that you can kind of think of. You can bring it in parts, all
Mm-hmm.
right, and then weld it into weld it, fix it, put it together in Canada, and then truck it into the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So that now it's more Canadian than it is Chinese.
Chinese. Yeah.
Okay,
So I
changed
will
its
add to
name.
that. I will add to that. If you want to do that in the form of an FTZ, those are two separate certifications. There is an FTZ certification just for storage, and there's another FTZ certification for assembly or changing a product significantly. The
There
reason
you
why
go.
you would change the product significantly is because exactly the situation you said. If you import it in parts and the HS code is a higher tariff, but the completed product is at a different HS code at a lower tariff, that could be done in an FTZ in the United States, and potentially save you some money there. I think it's the same idea that you're in the middle of explaining.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, if you can't do it, in parts and so forth, the machine that comes from China or the high dollar whatever that comes from China may have multiple components in it. I mean, they may have a cylinder from Sweden and a I don't know, compressor from the UK and a Japanese motor or whatever.
Hmm.
Well, some suppliers, it takes time, but some suppliers will separate it out so that you only pay those tariffs on that component when it imports. Now you're still going to pay 145% on the part that was made in China. But the other ones, and they call this the valuation process, make sure that you are evaluating this properly. And
Hmm.
so you can take these pieces out and save, significant money. We actually have a friend, and his machine is tariff is $900 million.
Right.
And I, needless to say, it's on hold right
Uh
now,
huh. Uh huh.
but he cannot do and perform and make America great again with his new
Yeah.
manufacturing plant here in the United States because his machine is stuck. He can't
Yeah.
afford it. So that's why I say something's got to give. And you can write to your congressman. You can try a binding ruling, which will um, which actually I have suggested to a few of my customers, because the binding ruling actually explains to U.S. Customs why your widget should have an educational or informational, why it should be part of this medical, maybe reduction plan, maybe part of the electronic exclusion. Eh,
Is that real? I thought he went back on that.
no, electronics are still okay.
Oh, okay.
The iPhone, yeah, iPhone and laptops and all that. As of what I was reading
As
this
of this
morning, I mean, I've
second.
tried to really keep up.
Right, right, right.
um, but he didn't go back on that, from what I understand.
Okay.
Now, again, I
Right
could
now,
be
this
wrong.
second. Yeah.
I did go to sleep last night, but
Yeah.
so but these binding rulings are things that, if you've got a trademark item, if you really think it should always be dismissed, exempt, um, not part of any pawn game,
Hmm.
then let's get a binding ruling. It costs a couple $100. You write up what you think. We bring it to compliance. Compliance makes sure that it is in U.S. Customs legal format and their wording, and then we send it on, and they'll accept it or not. And a lot of things may be exempt, or may at least be questioned, when you start looking outside the box. I mean, and that's one of those things that I actually fell right in it, and I did not, until I started investigating, realize that one of my customers really could have been an educational product.
Okay.
And then we went further into it, and it's like, well, do you have to have a classroom, or do you have
Mhm.
to, can it be sold online? What do you have to all of a sudden have, Charles's, K through 10,
Right.
learning center,
Thing on
whatever.
there. I got you.
And, um, you know, what is that? Another
Okay.
document that you say, okay, this is, now I'm not only, an LLC for my product, I'm also an LLC of this learning center. And now you you paid a couple $100 now for your
And now I have
product to go
standing.
in as
Hmm.
an educational, which will save you 145%.
Nice. Cool.
So there's stuff out there that is legal, but you've got, I mean, your churn and burn, people are not going to work for
Right.
you. You've got to be really careful, and you've got to make sure that you investigate it on your own too. But AI has made that much easier.
Yeah, it made it that much easier to understand it, and frankly, to do the research that I did. Of course, I checked
Yeah,
the primary sources, which are also at that link, the executive order and the FTZ regulations,
right.
which are very easy to read. You don't even need AI, but they're very easy to read. I'm going to transition now into some Q&A.
Okay.
We have Kelly asking. Well, no, sorry. We have Melinda asking me, aren't I consider the seller if I'm not on Amazon and selling only on your own site? Does that make sense for DDP? It does. I mean, it does, just as long as it fulfills the seller to seller formula Pam covered. Am I right there?
Right. And the reasonable cost.
Right. Both of those. Both of those. You
That
have to have a reasonable
that's
cost,
where
and
you
yeah,
could get caught in an audit.
an audit by CBP or the IRS.
Customs,
Customs.
customs, yeah.
Okay. Um. Okay. Back to. Okay. So your advice to people, and there are plenty of them here, saying, well, my factory said please don't cancel the order, they'll ship DDP. Don't listen to the factory. I mean, frankly, the people need goods. How would
I
you
know,
advise it?
I know. This is a moral, ethical
Gotcha.
uh, type of question. Do you roll the dice? you know, um, I, I really, I mean, personally, um, I would make sure that I knew how it was going to go. I would ask my actual supplier, say, okay, this is DDP, and I'm not going to get any documents. I understand that. Um, so how do I know it's going to work? And if they can explain to you in as well as they can that they do this all the time, they have a credible freight forwarder on the other side. Um, you don't want to shut your business down, so
Hmm.
you've got to make the hard decision, just like you do in any business. Um, do I do it now? We had a shipment yesterday. I worked all day on it. Um, well, they forgot, the freight forwarder forgot actually to put um, the T86 on the forms, on the paperwork, all that, so it did not get in as a DDP.
Wow.
Um, yeah, yeah. So I spent all yesterday trying to figure out, it was not manifested properly. It was an air freight. It was not manifested properly because it the airline didn't know it had to be pre-entered and pre-qualified
Hmm.
under the under this exemption. So we spent all, and I mean the everybody that was within 500 feet of that airplane and the supplier spent all day and all night looking for different options. Um, I went through four different brokers to find something that may work. And
Hmm.
then I said, okay, let's do it then, and all that. And they said, oh, no, we're not going to do it. I'm just saying that may work. It's not worth our time. The custom system, the A system has rejected more than we've put in. We don't need busy work. We've got more than we can handle.
So,
So,
I mean, people's best judgment, people's best judgment, how they want to navigate their business.
and just like if hiring someone, I mean, just
Yeah.
like, do you get a white shelf or a brown shelf in your business? I mean, it's, I think a lot of it has to do with the faith you have in your supplier.
Okay.
That's how I would go personally. And now the French do DDP all the time because they don't want to mess with it.
Hmm.
They want no part of it. They, take care of it. Okay. So they do DDP, but see, they're used to DDP in
Right.
France.
And
See, this is
that's how they
all
do
of
it.
a sudden you're going from, you've always sent it sea freight. Now all of a sudden you're DDP.
Yeah.
Any of those are going to get flagged in the SCS system, in the ACE system, if, Doge or whoever wants to look for it.
Right.
That would
So
be
now,
where they would start. What is
so
out of the normal?
right. What is out of the normal these days? It's a scary
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Um, Last question, and then I'll close out. The Do you have the can you make it happen? Your Canada move, where you ship the goods from China to Canada, then Canada through the de minimis rule into the US?
I can at this time right now.
Right. At
It
this
will
time right
work.
now.
It will work.
Okay. So where
It
can people
will.
reach
Now
you?
it's a slow movement. I can tell you the problem is getting it into Canada. You're going to
Hmm.
have the new CARMs, and that's where you've got to be set up with the Canadian government. You're going to have a Canadian or related bank so that they can draw the duty and taxes right out. Well, depending on your product, you might not have any duty and tax duty, but you may have a GST of 5%, and there's a flat 5 no matter what.
Hmm.
But the actual function of it, from what I can gather from talking to LVK and what I do anyways on my regular Canadian shipments, um, it should work. It should work just
All right.
fine. Now, it's not
Okay.
going to be
So
cheap.
put the plug in there. Where can people find you?
Okay, you can email me at pam@rpclogistics.net.
All
My
right.
number is
And
901-355-8759.
all right. Giving your number out there is I mean, given that it's not a public number. I mean, that's a really personal experience. Guys, I can't recommend Pam
Well,
enough. Yeah,
that's how I operate. I treat your shipment like it's my own, and I think you can vouch for that. And
I
I
can.
I get in there knee deep to find out all these interesting things that you can do to help you.
I
That's what I'm
can.
here
And
for.
I was introduced to you at first as somebody where I can hand off the shipment and she'll hold my hand through the whole thing, and it's exactly what I got. I love it.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Wishing everybody a great business season, and stay tuned on the news. There's a lot shifting, and right now, this point in time, everything is valid. 2:52. I can end this stream. God knows what happened. Pam, thanks so much, and I'll
Thank
see you in
you.
a couple of weeks.
My pleasure. See you
Bye.
soon.